Nandito lang ako ngayon. Maling connection ni Sir Randy, okay ba? Bas sa internet? Connection ko, okay ka lang?
Okay naman po.
Sa area lang namin nagkakalat. Lagi na lang ganito sa amin. Yung ganitong oras nagkakalat.
May ground kasi. Good evening, everybody. Let us formally begin by singing the Untitled Chapter. For our opening prayer, we request um, Sylvia. Okay. Siya si ate. So, let's call Ate Munena.
Most precious, loving Heavenly Parents, my victorious true parents of heaven, earth, and all humankind, Father in heaven, we're so much blessed and grateful, Father in heaven, for this wonderful night, Heavenly Parents, that you given us a chance to gather here to attend you, Heavenly Parents, your DP online service worship with my parents. Father in heaven, as we continue to give an inspiration for this evening about the chapter 6, the second advent of my parents. Hope and pray, Father, that we could be able to really understand, especially, Father, the life of our true Father, Father Moon, Heavenly Parents, to use us, Heavenly Parents, as your mouthpiece, as your inspiration, Heavenly Parents, to the young brothers and sisters, Heavenly Parents. Thank you so much for always be guiding us and protecting us, Heavenly Parents, especially in our daily lives, Heavenly Parents, here on earth. Thank you so much for everything, and we pray, Father, for this tonight lecture, Heavenly Parents, we could be able to really feel your heart, Heavenly Parents, really feel your love, inspiration for us, Heavenly Parents. Thank you so much for everything. As I offer this prayer in behalf of our elders, leaders, brothers and sisters, in your parents' name, Adieu.
Aju, evening once again, brothers and sisters, and the Sylvia, our elders, our lecturers, and participants. So welcome to our another session, another day of 20th day of our 21 days. Yep. I hope everybody already eat their dinner para makapasok sa utak natin yung lecture.
Wala pa yan, hindi pa ako.
Meron pa gutom.
Hi. Yan.
Okay, yes. Let me show you once again. Oh, dito na pala. Let me guidelines of meeting guidelines 3 minutes. So let me allow me to share my screen. These are the basic meeting guidelines while we are attending the 21 days online development principle lecture series. Five basic meeting guidelines. Number one is don't be late. Always on time. So which means coming early before 7:30. Time is 7:30 to 10, so 7:30 here. And not only for for the participants, but as well as for the lecturers as well. Number two, always mute ourselves, especially when the lecture is going on. And yeah, by clicking the icon below. Then always turn on your video that we could always monitor, so that Ademolina could always monitor you, brothers and sisters. And yeah, for the sake of the lecturer as well, that so that they could see your face while they are giving lecture. So by clicking the icon. Then one of the most important is renaming yourself, putting your name, your complete name, along with the region, and with each sample, my name and okay, and then the last one, questions and reflections after the lecture. If you have any questions or any clarifications, it's clarified, and yeah, you are free to ask questions. And also we have reflection, so I hope everybody should always be ready to give their reflection after the lecture. This should be oral and written. Don't be shy. Just like this girl. Natawa pa siya. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. And now let's begin. First, I would like to welcome our coordinator for tonight. Just arrived because she's a busy person. I would like to welcome her. I hope she's ready now. Welcome, Kristen Bell de Apera. So, our coordinator. Coordinator, yeah.
Hindi, ako ang coordinator.
Ay, ikaw mag-coordinator. Baliktad pala. Wait.
Ako muna.
Ito, hindi kayo nagsabi sa akin, ha? Kaya tuloy. But ikaw na mag-lecture eh. Sabi niya, una. Sabi niya,
Baliktad ba?
hindi ko alam sa inyo, eh. Mag-usap mo na kayo sa
Next time si Doc Widow mag-coordinator naman daw.
Coordinator naman si
Para masubukan din daw niya.
Teka. Ano daw ba? Sabi niya kasi kanina, wala pa si Belle, kaya ako na lang mauna. And then, sabi niya nandiyan na si Belle. So, balik sa unang...
Sino mag-lecture, eh? Una, i-welcome ko na lang. Wala ata si Belle. Let's welcome mo kasi wala pa si Belle. Let's welcome at
Si Miss Belle nga. Si Miss Belle mauna mag-lecture.
Ay, si Bea ba? Ay, kaya naman na mag-coordinator tayo.
Ano na? Ang kulit. Nandiyan na ba si Miss Belle?
Belle. Wala pa ata. Wala sumasagot.
Nandiyan siya eh, naka-ano. Pero ewan ko kung nandiyan na nga siya. Ako na ba talaga, Belle? Okay.
Hello po. Hello everyone. Sorry po.
Di ba sabi ko sa inyo, busy yan. Like,
Traffic ka ba?
Na-traffic. Ang layo kasi. Sige, magla-lecture na po ba?
Sinong coordinator?
Si ate. At ako. Kwenta na kami. Happy kami.
Siya yung
Halo
mag-una
kayo sa gera.
mag-lecture. Ako na lang, sige, magko-coordinator na ako, mag-MC na ako. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Ay, tapos na ba yung ano? May nag-pray na ba?
Yes, sir.
May nag-pray na ba? May nag-pray na?
Yes po, kanina.
Meron na? Wala ako Good evening, brothers and sisters. Today, we participants of the online 21-day EP lecture series. And today is the most awaited day wherein we will be announcing, proclaiming ba? Talagang magpo-proclaim. Through our lecture, you can deduce the second coming of the Messiah. And our topic is the second Advent, chapter 6 of the part 2 of the Divine Principle. And our first lecturer is very young, maybe younger than you are, but she is the youngest among the UPTA lecturer, and also she is the most charming among the lecturers. And please let me welcome Miss Christine Bell Diapera.
Thank you so much. Okay. Before we start, may I request everybody to open your cameras? Diba, kaka-remind lang sa atin ni Kuya Herwin about the basic meeting guidelines. So, I hope everybody gets to open their cameras. In that way, makikita rin namin kayo. And then there will be an interaction between the lecturers and the participants. So, and also with that being said, I hope you open your cameras so that we can first take our pictures before we proceed with the proper lecture. So please open your cameras, brothers and sisters, so we can take a quick picture together. Hello, brothers and sisters. Ate Anime, Ate Christinette, if you may, you can open your camera. Thank you so much. Okay, please give your best smiles. Your face is your responsibility. So Hana, do set, smile. Okay, another one. Small heart, brothers and sisters. Hana, do set. Okay, another one. Ibaragi shinang. Sunflower pose. Say umani. Okay, last one. Vision 2027. Sumni. Okay, thank you so much, brothers and sisters, for participating. Sige. So to proceed, actually, kumuha lang talaga ako ng time kasi kinakabahan pa ako. So tonight, we will be talking about the second Advent, chapter 6. We're already at the very last topic, last chapter of the divine principle. Diba? Can you believe it, brothers and sisters, nasa last topic, last chapter na tayo. So, okay, let's start with the second Advent. So, from the previous sections, from the previous chapter, we have learned from the principle of creation up until the parallels in the history, the world wars. We have already talked about the world wars as well. And then now we have come to the point where we will be discussing about the most awaited topic in the chapter, in the whole part 2. Everybody, all the chapters are, it's fun. But then this one is the most controversial and not known to many of the individuals from the outside, diba? So tonight we will be talking about the second Advent, or the second coming of Christ. Since we have all known from for the past 2,000 years, Jesus had come and had already ascended. And now, all Christians have been awaiting for his second advent. So, and then Jesus clearly foretold that he will return here on earth. Yet, although he said that he will return based on the account of Matthew's, he did not say on which specific time would he come or how he will be coming. Diba? So he added that no one knew of the day and hour of his return. So we can also see this from the accounts of the Matthews. So nevertheless, if we have from the past sessions that we had, brothers and sisters, we have known na God always tells. God truly reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets. So from this we can deduce na God will be foreshadowing, or God will be telling us through the scriptures that we have, the Bible, that how the second advent of Jesus would be coming, and when and where. So those are the three questions of how, when, where, and how would Jesus return? The second coming of Jesus would return. So, yun. that God will surely reveal all secret about the second advent to his prophets before he carries out his work. So accordingly, God will certainly give prophecies to those faithful believers who are in the light. So that is what we are going to discuss today. How the second advent will be coming, and then we will be examining scriptures and passages from different accounts. Okay, so yeah. So let's first talk about when will Christ return. So, di ba? Kasi yung goal natin is malaman natin when, where, and then how will he return. So the first one, we will be talking about the when. So, recalling back about the parallel providential ages, di ba we have already discussed this from the previous chapter and then sections as well. We have talked about from Abraham's time up until Jesus, and then we will be also talking about and then in the New Testament age from Jesus' time to the returning Christ. So we call this time after Christ's second advent the last days. And if we recall, the last days did not only happen once. It happened during Noah's time, and it also happened, diba, are you, I think familiar naman tayo sa last days because we have already discussed this from the previous chapter. And then also this time that we are living right now, so the time of the second advent of Christ is also the last days. So as it was explained in the eschatology, we are living in the last days today. We can thus understand that today is truly the time of Christ's return. And if you also recall, diba, there are a lot of prophecies and prophecies that would point out now this is the last days. And if you recall, yung 2012, it's the peak of where everybody is anxiously waiting because we all feel like we are living on the last days. No, although not many would be acknowledging it or would be conscious about it, but we are actually, almost all of us is anxiously in that position, in that state where we are we feel like we are already in the last days. Okay. As can be seen in the above chart, Jesus came at the conclusion of the 2-year-long Old Testament age, the age of the providence of restoration. So the principle of restoration through indemnity leads us to infer that Christ is to return at the end of the 2-year-long New Testament age, the age of the prolongation of the providence of restoration, which has been restoring the previous age through substantial parallel conditions of indemnity. So, diba, yun, that's also, that is also why we were talking about the Old Testament age, right? Where we have discussed the different periods before the coming of Christ and after the coming of Christ. And then when we compare these two periods, we can actually see that there is parallelism between these two periods. And that is why we can conclude that, diba, since Jesus came after the 2,000 year long history, the second coming of Jesus or second coming of Christ would also come after the 2,000 year long of history, which is already the New Testament age or the New Testament period. So we can thus conclude that the period of the second advent began soon after the end of the First World War. Because if we look back, diba, dito at the very end of the First World War, it was the point wherein nag-conclude yung 2,000 year. So from then, we can actually conclude, or we can actually draw into conclusion that the second coming of Christ will be coming already. Kasi natapos na yan. The 2,000 year long of history has already passed. So, and that is on the year, and the end of the First World War happened on 1918. So, hindi man ako very kabisado with the history, but it happened there. So, and since we already have idea that the second coming of Christ will return after the 2-year-long history of the New Testament age, which ended on the First World War, which was around 1918. we now then go to in what manner or how will Christ return. So we will be talking about different perspectives on the Bible. So yun, yung mga passages in the Bible that have led us to think of how in what manner will Christ return. So we will be examining those perspectives, and we will be also tackling all those things. So yeah, in interpreting the Bible, the most important matter is to find the right perspective. This is very true, especially since we have started discussing about the principle, right? So this is the most pinaka basic point that everybody should have when we read the Bible. If we try to understand what is being said in the Bible, we should be able to find the right perspective, the right angle. So it doesn't so in this also we can, it's not only applicable to the Bible or how we perceive what is being written in the Bible, but it also applies to different things around us, diba? We have to always find the right angle, because if we are looking at it on the different angle from the right angle, then we won't be able to perceive it, or we won't be able to understand it as much as how it is trying to tell us. So kung yung sinasabi niya is uh, uh, like imagine the number 6, diba? If you look at it on a different angle, you can see it as a number 9. But then if you look at on the right angle, which is being written as 6, then yun, you will understand and you will know that it's the purpose of writing the number is to is number 6. It's not 9. So yun, it's really important that we approach this one, and we approach the Bible in the right perspective and in the right angle. So yun. So at the first coming of Jesus, there were undoubtedly many Jews who in biblical grounds expected the Messiah to come on clouds. So this is not only true, this is not only a happening on the second coming, but as well as in the first coming of Jesus. Many have believed that aside from Jesus coming to the clouds, he would be he will become a descendant from King David. So he will be born as in the lineage of King David. So that is there are a lot of prophecies of how Jesus on his first coming would come, and then that's why the expectations of the Jews was that, and then the most prevailing expectation that the Jews had before was that he will come on the clouds. However, in actuality, Jesus was born on the earth as a child into a lowly family. So, ayun. So the expectations that they had was that Jesus will be coming through the clouds. But then what happened was that he was born through Mary, and then if you recall, Jesus was born in the outskirts. He wasn't born, and then uh, the very unexpected thing about it is that although he was born on earth, he was not born from a privileged family or coming from a wealthy or the descendants or the lineage of those priests and then kings. He was then born from a lowly family. So it was far from the expectations of the Jews. So re-examining that, or so looking at that in the perspective of how the second coming might come. So we should re-examine the Bible from the perspective that the second advent of Christ may not take place in a miraculous way. It may in fact take place in the same manner as the first advent. So since in the first coming of Jesus, the expectations, or there are already prophecies telling that the first coming of Christ or the coming of the Messiah will be through clouds. And then also in the second coming of Christ, there are also prophecies, or there are passages that will lead us to think that the second advent of Christ will come through the clouds again. So in that, we can actually infer that maybe, or not maybe, that it could also happen the same way as how the first coming of Jesus had happened. So since the first coming of Jesus was happened through being born as a child on earth, as born as a flesh. So the second coming also could also come in that manner. He would also be born on earth. So now let us examine some passages in the Bible that will lead us to think, or that will lead us to a conclusion that Christ is born on earth. So in Luke chapter 17, verse 24 to 25, Jesus made a prediction about the Lord at his return, where he said, but first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. So, and then in addition, if Jesus were to return literally on the clouds of heaven, would he not be readily be accepted and honored even by the sin-ridden world? So, since Jesus himself gave that gave gave that word that the second advent, or the Lord at his return, or the Lord at his second advent would suffer many things and would be rejected by his generation. How would that be possible if he were to come through the clouds? And then if he were to come through the clouds with the angels, trumpets, singing aloud, and then so everybody will get to see him. Everybody will immediately follow him and immediately uh, honor him because he came here on earth through the clouds. So if he came in that miraculous sense, then Jesus would, the Lord at his second advent would not be suffering at all, or he would not undergo such persecution, and then he would not be rejected anymore. Thus, what Jesus said would then become no, it will become false. So it what Jesus said from his first coming would then appear as not true. And that what would that make Jesus if what he said were not to happen, diba? So what would you think, and how would you perceive Jesus after that, when he said that he will suffer, but then he did not suffer because he came through the clouds. So we cannot arrive to that point. Now ano we cannot, as believers, we cannot just reject what the prophecies or the scriptures have told us, especially if it's coming from our Lord Jesus Christ, right? So that's why we can now then go to the conclusion that Christ would not be born on earth. Christ would not come through the clouds, but instead he would be born on earth as a child with the flesh. So that is how we then can conclude. So Jesus foresaw that at the second advent, the Christians would be likely to persecute the Christ and condemn his as a heretic when he is born in the flesh. That is why he foretold that the Lord would suffer and be rejected by his generation. So from that passage, the reason why Christ said that the Lord at his return would suffer many things and be rejected is that because he foresaw that the second coming would be born in flesh. He would be coming as a child and not through the clouds. And thus, because he came in that manner, he will be persecuted, and then he will be condemned as a heretic by the people around him, by the generation. So this prophecy in Luke can never be fulfilled unless the returning Christ is born on the earth. So if that happens, then the prophecies itself would be nullified. So in addition, written in the Matthew chapter 7 verses 22 to 23, Jesus said, "On the day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you evil doers." So at the second advent of Christ, those Christians who expected his miraculous and glorious appearance will almost certainly reject him if he comes in the flesh of humble birth, just as how those priests and scribes from the time of the first coming of Christ rejected Jesus Christ when he proclaimed that he is the Messiah. So it is the same way, because those priests and scribes have believed that the first coming of Christ will be through will that he will come through the clouds. And then that is the same way to those believers at this moment who still believes and who still holds that the Lord at his second advent will be coming through clouds. So if they have if there is a person who would proclaim that he is the second coming, and then he is born through from a humble birth, then he would be most likely persecuted and rejected. So no matter how faithful they may be, the Lord will be left with no choice but to abandon them, because they will have transgressed against God. So hence this prophecy also cannot be fulfilled if Jesus comes on the clouds. So yeah, that is why, that's why also Jesus said that depart from me, you evildoers, because those faithful believers who have expected him to return through the clouds would reject him, and would reject him and persecute the second coming of Christ. So why did Jesus say that the Lord will come on the clouds? So why are there instances, or why are there accounts in the Bible that gives two different things? Like why did Jesus prophesy that the Lord will come on the clouds, and then why did he give that prophecy also that the Lord at his second advent will suffer and be rejected by his generation? So the first reason, so there are two reasons why Jesus said that the Lord will come on the clouds. The first one is to prevent the delusions of Antichrist, and the second, to encourage Christians on difficult path of faith. Yeah. Because there are a lot of instances and a lot of context that Jesus would encourage and would put light of hope within the believers through uh, prophecies and through his words. So the hope of Jesus' imminent return inflamed the zeal of his disciples and gave them the strength to overcome persecution by Judaism and Roman Empire. And then, encouraged by the ardent hope of the second advent, they were filled with the Holy Spirit and established the early Christian church even amidst great adversity. Since at the time of when Christ already have ascended into heaven, he gave that he gave the prophecy that he will be coming through clouds. And then the reason why Jesus said that is that to encourage, or to put up a flame in within, to give hope to the disciples to work harder, and to be wary of the time, and to be conscious about the era that they're living, because through that we can actually see that through the prophecy that Jesus said, the prophets have worked harder because they were anxious that Jesus will return at their lifetime, or during their era. So that's why and then also Jesus said that he would come before, he would come without when he come, the prophets would not be able to and the disciples would not be able to reach out the ends of the road yet. So that's why they have been really thinking, they have believed that Christ will come in their lifetime, but that did not happen. So the only reason that Jesus said that was to prevent the delusions of antichrists and to encourage Christians on difficult path of faith. So yun, those are the only reasons. Those are two of the reasons why Christ Jesus said that he will come on the clouds. So there are actually further discussions about this topic. However, due to limited time, we will be cutting it short at this point. And then, although brothers and sisters, if you want to really know and study more about the principle, you can do so by joining UPTA. So yun, plug lang. Now let's talk about section 3. Where will Christ return? So we already know that Christ Christ will return and how he will return. The first one, we have learned that he will return after the end of the First World War, which is around 1918. And then how he will come not through the clouds, but he will come through being born in on earth as a child in flesh. So yun. And then now we will be talking about where will Christ return. So since we already have that idea, ito naman yung pinaka interesting part. Where will Christ return? So the first question when we talk about where Christ will return is that will Christ return among the Jewish people? Who are the chosen people of this time, right? Since at the first coming, I said so since at the time the chosen people were the Jewish people, are the Jewish people still the chosen people of this time? So yun. So those are two of those questions that we have now, which we could give answer at this time. So some Christians expect that Christ will come again among the Jewish people. So based on such passages as Revelations chapter 7 verse 4, Matthew chapter 10 verse 23, and Matthew chapter 16 verse 28, where it was hinted that Christ will return among the Jewish people. However, there are also accounts in the Bible that points out that Christ will not come or not return among the Jewish people. So, so Jesus clearly conveyed that he would not come again to those people who persecuted him. God will take away the mission previously entrusted to them and give it to another people who can produce its fruit upon Christ's return. So therefore, the chosen people after Jesus' crucifixion are not the descendants of Abraham, but rather the Christians who have inherited the faith of Abraham. So yeah. So are the Jewish people still the chosen people of this time? The answer is no. It is already the Christians and the Christians who have already inherited the faith of Abraham who will produce who will be also have inherited the mission to receive the Messiah. So that is the second coming of Christ. So the Christians are already the chosen people. So the question, where will Christ return? So yun, we already have learned that yun, the chosen people are the Christians who are the believers after the crucifixion of Christ. So it is written in Matthew 21, verse 22 to 43, by the parable of the vineyard, Jesus conveyed that he will not come again to the people who persecuted him. If you remember, the parable of the vineyard is the story in the Bible wherein God entrusted he has this workers, and then he was yun, it's a vineyard. So since yun, may mga tao doon na that God has entrusted to take care of the vineyard. So and then since yun umalis yung since God already had entrusted them, so when the time came na it was already time to take away to get the harvests, and then the harvest. So God called people to take God has this yung mga he had tawag dito, he had another servants he asked servants to go to the vineyard to get the harvest. However, what happened was that when the servant came to the vineyard, those householder or those workers from the vineyard, instead of giving the harvest, they killed the servant. So and then when the servant did not return, God sent another servant to get the harvest. And then that also happened, that the same thing happened to the servant. So the servants that God has been sending in the vineyard to get the harvest were being killed. That's why it came to the point that God sent his son, so yeah, to go to the vineyard to take the harvest. And then the same thing happened. So if that were to happen, if you look into it, put that into context to what happened in the Bible. So in the time of Christ, would you want to send your son again to those people who have killed your own son? So that would be, yeah, yun yung magiging question, your takeaway, not takeaway. That would be a point to reflect on for everyone. So God will take away the mission previously entrusted to them and give it to another people who can produce its fruits upon Christ's return. So that's why God cannot send the second advent of Christ into the same people, because we already have known or learned about what the Jewish have done, what the failures of the Jewish people of that time. So in this parable, when we go back to the parable of the vineyard, the householder represents God, and the vineyard represents God's work. The tenants entrusted, the tenants or the workers in the vineyard, represents the Jewish people, and then the servants represents the prophets, and then the son of the householder represent Jesus. So, and the other tenants who harvest the fruits represent some other nation which can receive Christ at the second advent and realize God's will. So the parable of the vineyard actually was a representation of why God would not send the second advent of his son in the same people. So that is why it's no longer the Jewish people, but the Christian who became the chosen people of this time. So Christ will return to a nation in the east. So since we already have known that, yeah, it's among Christian people or the Christian believers that Christ will be the second advent of Christ will be coming from the Christian believers. So in what countries or in what place would the second advent of Christ will return. So there are multiple accounts that will lead us to conclusion that Christ will return to a nation in the east. So why east? Where in the east? So yun. It is written in Revelation chapter 7, verses 2 to 4, that it indicates that the seal of the living God will be placed on the foreheads of the 144,000 in the east, where the sun rises. So where does the sun rises? It rises from the east, right? So these chosen ones will accompany the Christ at his return. So we can thus infer that the nation which will inherit the work of God and bear its fruit for the sake of the second advent is in the east. So the second coming would be coming from the east. And this is not only this is not only supported by the Bible itself, but there can also be supported by other accounts of other religious accounts. So yeah. So yung countries naman na consider natin dito sa east, because the east, yeah, far east from the Bible, diba, since when sayang. So anyway, so yeah, so since ancient times, the nations in the east have traditionally been considered to be the three nations of Korea, Japan, and China. So Japan, so it's either of the three eastern nations, that yung magiging chosen nation where the second coming of Christ will return. So let's now examine the three countries. First, let's go to Japan. So Japan at this time entered the period of the second advent as a fascist nation and severely persecuted Korean Christianity. So yeah, that's why when we go back to Korean history, when we actually look at the Korean history, Japan has been actively they have been actually actively dominating other countries, not only Korea, but then if you look into our history as well, Japan also have invaded the Philippines, right? So Japan has been actively invading other countries as a fascist. So they have been persecuting Christianity, specifically Korean Christianity, when they put Korea under yun, colonial rule. So yeah. So China, however, And China, at the same time, was a hotbed of communism and would become a communist nation. So thus, both nations, Japan and China, belong to Satan's side. So Japan, who is a fascist, who is a fascist, and then China, which had the tendency to become a communist. So from that category alone, from that perspective alone, they stood in the position where Satan could claim them. So they are in the position of Satan's side. So Korea, however, is the only nation in the East where Christ can return. So as the nation to which Messiah returns, Korea had to meet the following qualifications. So, yun, expounding further to this one, so when we actually look at when we actually look into the history of Korea, Korea had suffered greatly in mm, their history, and then there are a lot of things that they have undergone, and then unlike any other country, Korea is one of those countries who never invaded any other country and who were very open to all the other religions. And we will be discussing that further in the next slides. So yeah, so from that point, from the category alone, Japan and China cannot become the chosen country where the coming of Christ would return, but it was Korea who was the chosen country where Christ will be returning. So yeah, so the conditions that Korea must met is that first, it should have a national indemnity. So how can for in order for Korea to really become, so although yes, Korea had already been chosen as the country where the second coming of Christ will return, that they also still have to fulfill meet the qualifications. And then how let's examine and investigate how Korea uh, had meet this had met these qualifications. So for Korea to become a nation fit to receive the Messiah, it had to fulfill a national dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan, for the cosmic level restoration of Canaan. So if Christ returns to Korea on this foundation, the Korean people are destined to become the third Israel. So as the third Israel, the Korean people had to suffer under a nation on Satan's side for a period which fulfills the number 40. Thereby, they could fulfill a dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan as required to commence the cosmic level course to restore Canaan. So, and then when we go back we look into the history of Korea, the Korean people suffered under Japan for 40 years, from the Ulsa Treaty of 1905 to their liberation in 1945. So their suffering paralleled the hardships of the first Israel in Egypt and the second Israel in the Roman Empire. Actually, when I read about not entirely the history of Korea, but then when I read about a portion of the history of Korea, it was they went through so much. And then we can actually read this in the books of the autobiography of both our true mother and true father, Reverend Song Mingmin and Dr. Hak Jahanman. So those 40 years that they have been under the Japan colonial rule, it was so intense that the suffering paralleled the hardships of the first Israel in Egypt and the second Israel in the Roman Empire. So with that alone, they already have met the national condition of indemnity, since the whole Korea, the whole country, have been under the Japanese colonial rule. And then the second qualification that Korea must meet is that it should be God's front line and Satan's front line. So after Korea had been liberated from the Japanese colonial rule, it had hindi kakatapos pa nga lang ng liberation nila. Nag uh, another great happening had happened in their country. So at the point of confrontation between God and Satan, a sacrifice must be offered as a condition to determine the outcome of the their struggle. So the Korean people wear this sacrifice placed on this frontline battle of to be offered for the sake of the restoration of the universe. So right after pa lang ng liberation nila, Korea has been then separated into two, the North Korea and South Korea, with the 38th parallel separating these two parts of Korea. And then wherein in the North Korea, communism have prevailed, and in the South Korea, democracy have prevailed. So when we look at that, they also again have met the second qualification that that would uh, put them in a position where Christ can return in their country. So therefore, God divided the Korean nation just as Abraham's sacrifices were supposed to be divided. This is the reason behind the division of Korea by the 38th parallel, which split it into two nations, one Cain type and other Abel type. So the 38th parallel is the front line of the battle between democracy and communism. So yan. So yeah. So another reason, so this happening actually did not just happen because uh the people wanted to, but then it also have God's way of separating Korea. And then yeah, when you go back to the point of history where in Abraham, like God had asked Abraham to cut um the offerings into two. So yun, it also had happened, and so that is also a representation of what happened in Korea. So yun. And then, so when these two roads came into global conflict, it was centered on the Korean Peninsula. Religions, ideologies, political forces, and economic systems all came into conflict and caused great confusion in Korean society, which then had worldwide impact. And when you look at from all the other countries in the entire world, it is only Korea na may division, na may north and south. And then if you look at it, actually, it's just a small country. It's a small country. It's not as big as Europe. It's not as big as Russia or any other country. It's just a small country, but still they are divided into two. And then they have different system, completely different system between these two countries, diba? Two parts of one country. Okay, supposedly one country. Ayun. So when the world will came into global conflict, it will be centered on the Korean Peninsula, which is the which is the both the place of Satan and God. Right. And then the third qualification that Korea has to meet is that it should become the object partner of God's heart. So to become the object partners of God's heart, we must first walk a path of blood, sweat, and tears. So how can we, as loyal and faithful children, be comfortable and complacent and still expect to remain the object partners of our Heavenly Father, who is suffering in deep agony? So the miserable history of the Korean people was the path required of the chosen people of history. So yeah, this part of yung qualification is actually very, very masakit sa heart. Then the second, the nation qualified to stand as the object partner of God's heart must be people of goodness. So the homogeneous Korean people rarely invaded other nations, and that's why when you look at the movies, Korean movies, if you're fond of it, Korean series, diba, there are a lot of historical series and movies about the Korean history, and then it will show how much how 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 Korean people have suffered so much, and then how they have remained good despite all those things that they have been through. And then despite being invaded so many times, despite being put in such a very tough position, they have remained good. And then yeah, they did not invade any other nation. Their only goal was to protect their people, to protect their land, but they did not go into another country to invade them or to dominate them. Instead, they have remained uh, in their place, protecting their people and their place. So yeah. And then last, and another one, the Korean people are by nature endowed with a religious character. And this is also very true. When we look at the people, when we go back to the context, kasi very famous naman kasi yung mga Korean series and Korean movies. Diba, if you look at them, if you have noticed, Korean people actually are very conservative. They're actually very religious, although it may not be Christian belief, but then napaka broad ng religious uh, realm in the in Korea, and then you can really see how much they have um, protected themselves, how prepared they are as individuals. So they have events a strong desire to worship God and always revered the virtues of loyalty, filial piety, and chastity. Yeah, this is very actually this is uh one of the characteristics that made them um qualified to become the chosen nation where Christ will return. And then the spirit of filial piety, fidelity, and loyalty, which are the fundamental virtues of human life, is alive and breathing in Korean history. So this we will be giving examples of how these three virtues have been portrayed by Korean people. So the true filial piety, exemplified by Shim Chong, a devoted daughter who offered her life so that her blind father could see, is the standard of filial piety Koreans uphold as they serve their parents. So from before, this person, Shim Chong, is one of the revered Korean person, Korean persona who had um, showed his true filial piety to um, her parents, to her father. So that is something that Korean people upholds and then look up until now. And then the profound love naman and fidelity displayed by Chun Yang, who overcome the fear of death in order to keep the promise she had made to her husband, is a signpost of all of life for all Korean women. And then lastly, the unbreakable loyalty exhibited by Admiral Yi Sun Shin, who gave his life to save his nation and people, despite being abandoned by his king and other leaders, is the pride of the spirit of the Korean people. So these stories of these three great individuals persona who have showed filial piety, fidelity, and loyalty is not the only accounts or not the only stories of Korean people na who have portrayed and showed this one. There are a lot of there are still a lot of people naman who have showed and who have ano, really shown these three virtues. And then this is actually in innate to all Korean people. It's being taught to them already. So that is how really you can see that they are really the prepared people, the chosen people who have where God can really send his son. So then the last one, the messianic prophecies. So the Korean people have believed in the prophecies that the righteous king will appear and found a glorious and everlasting kingdom in their land. This messianic idea was revealed through the Cheongdam Nok, a book of prophecy written in the 14th century Korea. And then, second, among faithful of every religion in Korea are those who have received revelations that the founders of the religions will return to Korea. So, aside from although like what I've said, Korea is not although they have a wide range of religious realm in their country. So from the 14th century, they already have this idea that the Messiah would come. They already have the prophecy that the Messiah would come to their people in their land. So yun, and then and then among the faithful of every religion in Korea, a lot of people have received revelations that the um the founders of the religions will return to Korea. So those great um, founders of all the other religions will be going back, and will be resurrected, will be reborn in their country, Korea. So a lot of people have been receiving revelations aside from from this prophecy that they uphold, that the king or the second coming of Christ will return to their land. A lot of people also have been receiving revelations. And then the third one is that revelations and signs are being given to spiritually attuned Christians, testifying to the second coming of Christ in Korea. They are sprouting in profusion like mushrooms after a rain. So as a devout Christians make contact with spirits from various levels of the spirit world, from the lower realms to paradise, many are receiving clear revelations that the Lord will come to Korea. So yeah, a lot of people have been really receiving revelations and signs. That is why there has been a point in a period in Korea where a lot of people have proclaimed that they are the second coming of Christ, because a lot of people have received the revelations because they are spiritually attuned, and then spiritually prepared. They have been receiving revelations that the second coming is um will come in their country, and that they are the second coming. So thus, yun. And yun, di ba, going back sa second point, it says that founders of religions will return to Korea. So Christianity is the final religion that will complete the goal of the many religions in history. Therefore, with respect to his mission, Christ at his return may be regarded as the second coming of the founder of every religion. So that is the role of Christianity, to actually really bring unity, to unite all the religions, all the existing religions that is around the world. So, and then the second coming of Christ would be regarded as the second coming of the founder of every religion. So the second coming would not only be the second coming of Christ alone, but he would be regarded as the second coming of every founder of every religion, every existing religion that there is in the whole world. So the Lord whose coming has been revealed to believers in various religions, including Maitreya Buddha and Buddhism, the true man in Confucianism, the returning of Cho-Su-un, who founded the religion of Chondogyo, and the coming of Chong Doryong in the Chongamok will be none other than Christ at the second advent. So those founders of these great religions would be the same person as whom we are waiting in the Christian context. So he will be the second advent of Christ. So lastly, the last qualification to Korea must meet in order to become the chosen nation where Christ will return. The second coming of Christ will return is that it should be it should be a place where all civilizations can be culminated. So the culmination of all civilizations. So the spiritual and material aspects of civilizations developing from religions and science, which have flourished all over the world, will be embraced and harmonized in Korea as guided by the new truth. Diba? Since we have known from the earlier chapters that religions is in the spiritual civilization in the earth. It's been taking the path uh it's been approaching the path to receiving, or to following the path to the internal truth, or the spiritual religious aspect, while science is in the external truth or scientific, the material aspect of external aspect of things. Yeah. Um, so, uh, so in Korea, so the Korea must become the place where both religion and science can flourish, and through the guidance of the new truth. So then they will bear fruit in the ideal road of God's deepest desire. And when we actually examine the Korea now, they're only not flourishing as a country that is advanced in science, but they're also very active. They're also yun nga, yung religious realm in the country is very broad that they embrace all the other religions that is in their country. So that is how Korea will have become had become the chosen country, the chosen country where the second advent of Christ will return. So yeah. So the essences of all civilization which develop on the land should bear fruit in Korea. So the ancient continental civilization which arose in Egypt and Mesopotamia bequeathed their fruits to be the peninsular civilization of Greece, Rome, and Iberia, and thence to the island civilization of Great Britain. This island civilization passed on its culture to the United States, a continental civilization. Then the direction was reversed, with the United States passing on its culture to the island civilization of Japan. Now, these fruits are to be harvested in the peninsular civilization of Korea, where Christ is to be born. So, yan. So that is why flourishing talaga ang Korea, both scientifically and in the religious sense. So yes. So Korea and Korean people are the chosen people who will harvest this fruit. Yeah. And then the essences of civilization born on the shores of rivers and seas should bear fruit in the Pacific civilization to which Korea belongs. So, diba, when there's a saying that by the end of the river you will see a civilization, and that is why also the civilization from the end, Korea is at the very end of it faces the Pacific Ocean widely. So yun. So the river civilization which arose in the shores of the Nile, Tigris, and Euphrates rivers passed on their cultures to the civilization in the vicinity of the Mediterranean Sea. Greece, Rome, Spain, and Portugal. So these bequeath their fruits to the civilization on the Atlantic Ocean, notably Great Britain and United States. All these fruits will then be harvested in the civilization of the Pacific Ocean. So if we actually map this out, it had circulated, and yeah, how from one country to another, how it had um transgressed, yun, how it had tawag nito, move along through the course of history, together with the course of history. So Pacific Ocean, which links together the United States, Japan, and Korea. So yeah, and then lastly, the civilization born out of different climate zones should bear fruit in Korea. So in the round of seasons, living things begin their life and multiplication in spring, flourish in summer, bear fruit in autumn, and store their reserves in winter. So God created Adam and Eve in the springtime of human history. On the continent of Africa, people built the tropic zone civilization of Egypt. This continental civilization passed on its culture to the peninsulas and islands where cool zone civilizations developed. They bequeathed their fruits to the frigid zone civilization of the Soviet Union. Now this current is to culminate in the formation of the temperate zone civilization of the New Eden. This should certainly take place in Korea, where all civilizations are to bear fruit. So yun, that's all, brothers and sisters. I hope you had learned something, a thing or two from from the presentation that I just gave you. So yeah, to sum everything up, so the three questions that we had, when, how, and where, the answer would be when. It will be after the First World War, which is around 1918, and then that is the end of the 2 year long of history, diba, parallel to the first coming of Jesus. And then how he will be coming not through the clouds, but through he will be born as a flesh. And then the third one, where would Christ return, is that he will be returning to a nation in the east, specifically the nation of Korea. So yeah, that would be all, brothers and sisters. I hope you learned something from the lecture. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. Woo! So from this point onward, brothers and sisters, we will be then going to the next lecture, which will be given by my partner. So it will be the last chapter, the last section from this chapter. So let's all welcome none other than my very own partner at Relina Tolendo. 5678. Let's all welcome our brothers and sisters with a virtual clap. Welcome po.
So, Miss, good evening, Miss Tis. So, Miss Christine have discussed the when, how, and where will the Christ return of the second advent. She also discussed about the qualification why Korea is the country where the Lord of the second advent will come, and that actually it was so since the new chosen people is Christianity, so that would give us a hint where the what is the country that it must be a Christian nation, Christian nation, Christian, or there must be some Christian, or there must be God believers in there. So that makes it Japan and China eliminated as nations in the East. And then also it had also she discussed also the yung qualification that Korea must overcome or endure so that Korea will be worthy to be the chosen nation where the Lord of the Second Advent comes, and that the also she discussed also yung culmination of culture, both science and religion and science. So let us now talk about let us now share with you Section 5, the chaotic profusion of languages and the necessity of their unification. So we know very well that the world has many languages, and that most of the time we don't understand each other. And then even we don't need to go far, even in our nation, we have so many dialects. So we need to understand how does this happen, and then why do we need there is a necessity for the unification of languages. If human beings had not fallen, we would have form one global family, like one body with God as the head. Then there would never have risen a profusion of tongues unintelligible to one another. So, if Adam and Eve have not fallen, we have only one language, and that is the Adamic language. But we all knew and we have learned from the previous 15 chapter that that did not happen. So, because of people have scattered all over the world, they have formed so many languages, and how did it started? So, we can find that in the Bible. We can read that in the Bible, wherein it says that one day the descendants of Noah, second son Ham. So we know very well that Noah had three sons, and one of his sons is Ham, and Ham, from our previous sharing, have sinned against God by and that he wanted to build the Tower of Babel to exalt himself even above God, thus furthering the will of Satan. And then the descendants of Shem and Japheth, his brothers, who stood on God's side, helped with the construction. So because of this, God brought such confusion to their languages that they could no longer communicate with each other to further the will of Satan. So let us see kung ano ba talaga yung nakasulat dun sa Bible. That is written in Genesis chapter 11 verse 1 to 9. Sabi dito, now the whole world have one language, a common speech. So that's in the time of Noah after the flood judgment, di ba? As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches the heavens so that we make a name for ourselves. Ito yung dito sila nagkasala. Likewise, we will be scattered. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the earth. So, kailangan mag-build daw sila ng tower para magkaroon sila ng name. Yun yung to exalt themselves para hindi daw sila magkahiwa-hiwalay. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower of the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they would have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the languages of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So the reason why uh, there are so many languages because the Lord have stopped them uh, from from furthering the will of Satan. So as offspring of the same parents, all of us have the same feelings of joy, anger, sorrow, and pleasure. Yet we cannot share our deepest feelings with one another because we speak different languages. Is not this one of humanity's greatest misfortune? If we are to realize the ideal world of one global family which can honor Christ at the second advent as our true parent, how surely our languages must be united. So, because of the second coming, we have and their position and their mission is becoming the true parent of humankind. So, their language must be our language so that we can be understand each other and we can be our languages must be united. When I am studying nag ano ako kasi nag ba to? Ah, meron kasi akong elective na hindi nakuha dun sa tawag dun sa graduate school. Kumuha ako ng subject sa education department. And then binigyan kami ng at that time for implementation pa lang yung implementation pa lang yung K to 12. And then isa sa mga papers namin na kailangan namin submit is evaluation sa implementation or the proposed implementation yung IRR IRR, yung implementation rules and regulation nung K to 12. Tapos dun ko nabasa yung mother tongue language. So yung mother tongue language is the language of the mother. So that's yun yung way niya yun yung kasi 'di ba ang parents ang unang teacher ng child. So ang ginagamit na language doon is the mother tongue language. That's the reason why sinasabi ang dapat sa K to 12 dapat Filipino dapat yung medium of teaching sa especially sa K-12 yung sa basic education. So ganun din naalala ko nung nabasa ko yun yung mother tongue language. So that's how we as children of our true parents, we must also learn their language or the mother tongue language or the language of our true mother. Kasi nang sa ganon, we can learn truly from them and their natures and characteristics. We can inherit them also. So that's the reason why we really need to, if we truly believe that our true parents are the Lord of the second advent, and we should be really learning their language. So, para magkaintindihan yung mga children nila all over the world. And this is also the reason why na to my own perspective na kailangan nating si father and even mother when they yung pag nag-speech sila, Korean language ang ginagamit nila. Nang sa ganon, ma-inherit natin yung language na yon. Para maintindihan natin yung essence. Kasi kapag translate kasi, through translation, 80% na lang yung natitirang essence ng original na speech. So, in order to understand the whole, we need to truly understand or learn the language of our true parents. If Christ does indeed return to Korea, the Korean language will become the mother tongue of all humanity, and all people should learn to speak it. All of humanity will become one people and use one language, thus establishing one global nation under God. So that's all about the uh, language and why must we uh, unite our languages centering on the language of our true parents. So the lamp of the east. This is this is a poem written noong 1929 by Rabindranath Tagore. He is a well-known poet, Asian poet. In fact, he have won the Nobel Prize winner for literature noong 1912 because of his poems sa yung and then si Rabindranath Tagore ay kilalang kilala din siya sa Korea because of this lamp in the east na 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 of this poem na ginawa niya. Wherein ito sinasabi niya, and during the time na ginawa niya tong poem na to, and it was published sa Ilbo, basta isang tuwan-tuwa yung mga Korean sa kanila, ay yung Korean sa kanya, and this nagbigay ito ng pride and encouragement sa kanila to go on. Ito kasi yung si Rabindra, what is amazing, hindi naman kailanman nakapunta si Tagore sa Korea. Pero gumawa siya ng ganitong poem. In fact, si Rabindranath Tagore kasi kilalang kilala siya at siya yung first Asian na naging Nobel Prize winner. Nasabi ko na ba yan? Hindi siya nakilala niya yung Korea nung nag-visit siya sa Japan. Noong 1912 siya naging 1912 siya naging winner sa Nobel Prize. Tapos doon niya nung nasa Japan siya, may mga nakilala siyang university student na mga Korean, kaya nakita niya kung yung kultura ng Korean. So, and then after that, kaya niya ginawa itong yung poem na to noong 1929. Ito yung kasagaran ng paghihirap ng Korea dun sa dahil sa Japan. So ito siya. In the golden age of Asia, Korea was one of its lamp bearers. Kaya nilagay ito sa natin. This is also a proof that God have guided so many people, even as famous as Rabindranath Tagore, to that Korea is an important nation in the East. Korea was one of its lamp bearers, and that lamp is waiting to be lighted once again for the illumination of the East, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the word has not been broken up into fragments of narrow domestic walls, where balls came out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arm toward perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not yet lost its way into the dreary desert sand of deadly habit. Um, ang isa pang maganda dito sa uh, sa poem na to, kasama to sa inaaral ng Korean. Translate sa Korean ito and naging part sa literature nila, literature study nila. In fact, nagtayo din ng isang sa Seoul, meron dung statue ni Rabindranath Tagore. Siya lang yung dun sa center ng culture ng Korea, nandoon yung statue ba tawag doon, ni Rabindranath Tagore. Ganun ka famous si Rabindranath Tagore sa Korea because of this poem na he have written for Korea. This poem brings pride to the nation, even at the midst of their struggle against Japan's colonization. So, let's yung national dispensation, diniscuss kanina yung national dispensation of 40. Dinidiscuss lagi natin yung national dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan, for the separation of Satan in all dispensation of God to prepare the coming of the Messiah, or for the restoration of Canaan or the nation. And this Canaan is now the chosen nation, which as we have learned, is the chosen nation of Israel. Before it's the chosen nation of Israel, bago dumating si Jesus Christ, and now since the Israel the chosen of people of Israel killed Jesus Christ as the first coming of the Messiah, napunta sa Christian, di ba? So there must be also yung meron din dapat, we will now discuss in detail yung dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan for the second advent. So ito yung first providential course and the second providential course. The first providential course started in the Ulsa Treaty. Yung Ulsa Treaty, this is Japan Protectionate Treaty for Korea. Na ang sinasabi dito, ito yung this is a treaty signed by the Korean Emperor and Japanese Emperor. Pero sa totoo lang, ipoprotect daw niya yung Korea dito, kahit na sinong, even the United States, even na sinong nation, hindi pwedeng makialam kung sa pamamalakad ng Korea ng Japan sa Korea. Hindi naging free yung Korea, wala silang diplomatic sovereignty sa yung Korea. So actually, naging kaya lang naman to napirmahan kasi at gunpoint ito. Yung ibig sabihin, habang pinipirmahan to, napalibutan ng mga Japan, yung palace ng emperor ng Korea is nakapalibot yung mga Japanese army, something like that. Na kung hindi pipirmahan to, so papatayin yung emperor. Kaya napirmahan yan eh. Kaya napirmahan to. So, yun. And this started yung 40 years na suffering ng Korea sa colonization ng Japan. And it lasted, lasted for 40 years noong 1945. nung naging na free sila sa na free yung Korea sa colonization ng Japan. Kaya siya yung 40 years. And then yung second providential, so dapat yung second providential course is that, so within the 40 years nag-end yung World War. Alam naman natin, yung first providential course, nag-end yung World War One, and then this give way to the birth of the true father noong 1920. Nagkaroon din ng first March movement. And then nung matapos yung 40 national dispensation for the separation of Satan, ito yung natapos yung colonization nila, na yung Messiah appeared, ito yung pumunta si Father, di ba? Bibili lang dapat siya ng bigas. Bibili lang dapat siya ng bigas. Yun siya nag-cross, di ba? Tinawag siya ni God, sabi niya papunta siya sa pinapunta siya kaagad, pinag-cross kaagad siya sa DM, deliminate yung 38 parallel, kasi nga kung hindi pa siya magko-cross doon, hindi siya makakarating doon. So ito yung appearance ng Messiah. That after the appearance of Messiah, dapat kasi i-accept na siya ng Christianity. Pero alam natin na hindi ganun yung nangyari. So alam din naman natin, if we will be learning yung True Parents course later on sa next meeting. Makikita natin na kung bakit yun. Hindi ko alam kung i-discuss siya. Hindi yata siya i-discuss yan. Yung dapat dito, i-accept na siya ng Christianity. Kasi mayroon kinalaman yung establishment, yung first president ng Korea. Dito yung si Sigmund Rhee. Kasi yung first wife ni father is somewhat related to the president, yung Sigmund Rhee. Kaya yun yung mission niya kasi. So yun yung, since ang hindi nangyari yung hindi tinanggap si Father as the Lord of the Second Advent ng Korean Christianity, kaya nga siya pumunta sa Pyongyang, di ba? Kasi pag makikita natin, Pyongyang is sa autobiography ni True Mother, nakalagay doon, Pyongyang is the tawag dito, siya yung Jerusalem of the East. So kaya doon siya pumunta doon siya nagpunta. So kailangan siyang tanggapin as the Messiah, pero hindi ganoon yung nangyari. Sa unification to yata inaaral siya. Doon ko nakita na yun yung gano'n, yung mayroong isang libro doon na tungkol sa True Parents course. And then because hindi tinanggap ng Christianity si Father, nagkaroon ng 40 years prolongation. That is from 1945 to 1985. So doon, so what is the 40 years after 1945 and 1985? Father was in America during some of this time. There he went to Danbury prison. So napunta nakulong si Father. Why did he go to Danbury prison? Why did he have to do his work in Africa, and America at all. There the three brothers. There are three brothers in America. They believe in and worship the same God after their father. Alam naman natin kung sino yun. Yung father na yan is si Abraham, di ba? Representing Judaism, Christianity, and the Unification Church. The first son is Judaism, the second son is Christianity, is the son of Christianity, and the third son, the son of Unification Church. America is the only place where these three brothers reside in the same country. And this made it the central country of God's providence. That is why Father went to America. Siguro tataka kayo, yun yung reason kung bakit uh, pumunta si America si Father. And then, yung elder brothers oppose, alam naman natin na yung elder brothers oppose Father, yung representative ng Judaism. And Judaism killed Jesus Christ. If you remember, kung dito sa Pilipinas, yung Judaism is yung ano nila, tawag sa mga tao na sa kanila is mga Jews. Kung dito sa Pilipinas, ang mga yung sa business, yung mga mayayaman na businessman ay mga Chinese. Sa Amerika, ang mga mayaman na businessman ay mga Jews. So ibig sabihin that is how great yung ano nila, yung kung paano nila pwede nilang na ma-manipulate nila yung business industry sa yung mga Jews sa Amerika. So, yun. And then yung Christianity, they are to complete salvation. Pero ganun din, because since they did not accept Father as the second advent, yun din. So, kaya sila nag-o-oppose kay Father. Na-remember ko nung pumunta ako ng Korea, meron kaming peace rally. Hindi ko lang alam kung anong tawag. Nakalimutan ko yung peace rally. Pero may mga Christian na sumalubong sa amin. May mga Christian na sumalubong sa amin. Hindi ko naiintindihan yung lahat ng Korean kasi yung iba. Pero ang naiintindihan ko lang na isang placard na English. Sinasabi doon, ang nakalagay doon, isa lang daw ang Messiah, si Jesus Christ lang daw. Yan yung sinasabi nila. So, yun. So, that's how the elder brothers oppose, or the Judaism oppose Father. Pero ang parang din dun sa kung matatandaan nyo, itong brothers na to ay synonymous dun sa nangyari sa mga anak ni Jacob, di ba? Dun sa kay Joseph na kaya ang ginawa ni Father, sinave niya pa rin tong mga Jews na to, yung mga Jews sa yung Christian. And then still on the 40 years prolongation from 1945 to 1985, sabi ni Father, meron daw siyang 3 enemies sa Amerika. Yung Judaism, representing 4,000 years na as chosen people, and then Christianity 2,000 years, and communism ng tina-target ay Judaism. So ang ginawa ni Father pero just like Joseph, para ma-save niya yung kanilang, naalala niyo si Joseph kasi, di ba? para tina-target din siya na patayin ng mga kapatid niya, 'di ba? Yung mga kapatid niya, pero may isa doon na sabi, wag natin patayin 'yan, ibenta na lang natin. So nabenta siya. So hindi siya napatay ng hindi siya, parang parallel ito nung nangyari doon sa sa mga doon kay Joseph, sa mga anak ni Jacob. That's why ang ginawa ni Father, finound niya yung the Washington Times. So ang ginawa niya, this is because of, kaya tinatarget ng communism yung Judaism and Christianity to save them, di ba? Kasi anti-God yung mga communism. So galit sa kanya, so para ma-save ni Father yung mga brothers niya, yung Judaism and Christianity, binili niya or yung tinayo niya yung Washington Times with huge investment to fight communism, which has been on the chasing of the two elder brothers away. Father said that he thinks that Joseph, whenever his two older brothers try to kill him, they are the ones who served and attended God for 6,000 years before Father was born. Father said that this is the reason he must, even though he must save them, even though they tried to kill him. What did Father do after being released from the prison? Father said, my elder brothers tried to kill me, but I have achieved the great work of saving my brothers. Through this, I finally restored elder brother sonship. So ito yung nangyari. Restoration of elder brother sonship because of yung victory ni Father sa 40 years prolongation sa Danbury prison. So ano naman yung another 40-year prolongation ng 1948. Kung makikita natin kasi dito, yung 1948 to 1988. Merong, kung mapapansin natin dito sa chart na to, nag-overlap yung 40 years 40 dispensation for separation of Satan. Ang understanding ko lang dito, nag-overlap siya. This is a way for Father to restore everything, yung national dispensation, para compress niya lahat para magawa niya lahat sa lifetime niya. Kaya may overlapping ng 40 years. So alam naman natin kung nag-overlap yung 40 years, just like when we do our condition na may overlapping siya, mas malaki yung mas mahirap yung condition, di ba? So ito naman, ano naman yung meaning nung 1948 to 1988? Declaration of Nation of the Unified World. This has something to do with the unification of the Korean Peninsula. Ayaw gumalaw ng So dito yun yung centering dun sa ito yung establishment of the government of Korea, yung nag-start to sa establishment of government in Korea, tapos naging 1988. Dahil hindi pa rin talaga alam naman natin kung ano nangyari after that. Immediately, almost immediately after nung establishment ng Korean government, mababasa din natin din sa memoir is that nagsasaya sila pero si Father hindi siya masaya kasi alam niya na maghihiwala yung Korean Peninsula at that time. So, yun yung naging reason, naging ano. So, kailangan ang kaya naghiwalay yung isang indemnity nung hindi pag ano ba yon, hindi pag tanggap kay Father, the Lord of the Second Advent ng Christianity ay yung pagka naghiwalay yung Korean Peninsula. So para kailangan silang mag-unite, di ba? Just like yung pag-unite na mag-unite dapat yung Esau and si Esau and Jacob. Si Esau na naman. And centering on paano na-restore yun ni Father yun sa 1988 Seoul Olympics wherein may mga 100, yung athletes na dumalo dito is 160 countries and 514 from Soviet Union. Father invited the athletes and athletes moved by Father's providential work and Soviet athlete offered gold medal to Father. So lahat to inimbitan ni Father. Itong mga to, 514 and one of the athletes offered to Father yung kanyang gold medal. So, ang ibig daw sabihin nito, the athletes from 160 nations, the largest on record, and numbered from 13,000 with 415 from Soviet Union. Alam naman natin yung time na yun, Soviet Union yung star sa communism, di ba? Father invited them and their staff to Little Angels Art Hall and treated them well with food, dance, performance, and gifts. They were greatly moved when they were shown Father's worldwide providence. The party continued for 3 days, and on the last day, the Soviet athletes came. Father's disciple presented his work, saying, Reverend Moon has no enemies and hates no one, working hard for world peace with great accomplishment. The guests were greatly moved, and the Soviet gold medalist offered Father his medal. He said they received so much from Reverend Moon and couldn't live without giving something back. Father was elated and said, okay, as second generation of enemy nations come to me with all things, the path will now open. He said that in the 88 Olympics, he represented Jacob, and the second generation represented Esau. Although they came to Korea to do sports, from the providential point of view, they met and united with Father. Father said that the 88 Olympics created an important occasion for the unification of Jacob and Esau. Externally, it was a chance to broaden the public knowledge of the Unification Church. Internally, world leaders came together to form sisterhood and proclaim the nation of unified world, thereby accomplishing what we have not been able to accomplish over the previous 40 years. So, still on the, again, the providence to restore parentship, 40-year prolongation pa rin to. Ito yung mga 40 years na sunod-sunod na 40 years, yun yung overlapping 40 years na that Father was restored. Or this one is 1952 to 1992. Kung makikita natin yung kanina, 1952. May 1952. Yung 1952, di ba, ito yung time wherein, wala, ayaw na. Ayaw nang gumalaw. Yung 1952 is the time wherein dito tinayo ni Father yung yung Holy Spirit Association for the Innovation of World Christianity, di ba? Yun. And then, ang ginawa niya dito, ang main accomplishment niya, handle niya yung communism or napigilan niya, di ba? Sa pagdami or pag-conquer ng world, di ba? And even dito 40 years from 1952 to 1992, this year Father put mother forward before the world. Before this, Father had to accomplish an important task of handling communism. He met Mikhail Gorbachev in 1990 and Kim Il-sung in 1991. This meeting did not take place by coincidence. Later, our father had made a tremendous amount of investment in China, a communist country. He protected the Chinese economy until the end with the Panda Providence. Ito yung Panda Motors. Okay, basahin niyo na lang about yung Panda Motors that father have been invested so much. Parang $1 billion ba yung sinasabing investment ni father dito? And this shocked the communist world. Father helped China because although she is an enemy nation, so she must walk in the forefront of God's providence in the Archangel nation. So, ito yung ang tawag ni Father China is lumalabas is an Eve nation. So, it follows din, pag titignan mo dun sa Revelation, yung meron kang pagbabasahin natin yung Revelation, mababasa natin na may mga symbolism doon that refers to China sa modern day. And then sinasabi doon, dinidescribe yung China sa modern day as an Eve nation. So yun lang yung napansin ko sinasabi dito. The Soviet Union, so bakit pumayag na makipag-meet si Gorbachev kay Father? So the Soviet Union Secret Service KGB collected information about the activities of Father, including the Banda project, and concluded that he was truly working for the sake of others. They were moved by his genuine sacrifices and his work for the sake of his enemies. This is facilitated his meeting with Gorbachev. So yun yung ginawa niya. So secretly, inimbestigahan ni Gorbachev si Father, kaya naging posible na ma-meet ni Father si Gorbachev. At ang kapalit nun, isang ganon para ma-meet din ni Father si Kim Il-sung or i-represent ng si Father ng China kay Kim Il-sung para makausap natin siya. Kaya di ba nakita nyo dun sa memoir din ni Mother, makikita na natin na ang papunta sila ng North Korea dun sa China sila nang galing, di ba? From Hawaii to China, then to North Korea. Kasi nga because of the Panda Providence, pumayag yung China na maging para makausap si Kim Il-sung. Parang ganon. The Soviet tapos na yan. So this in 1992, Father put mother forward before the world. Ito yung nagkaroon ng ng speaking tour si Mother. This is when I have met sa dalawa sa kanila ni Father, si Mother ang una kong nakita noong 1992 dun sa dun sa one of his speaking tour dun sa PICC ba? Kumatanda na yun. Basta sa Mordor in Pasay. So, yung 1990 meeting with Gorbachev World Media Conference in Moscow, tapos Freedom of Religion, take down Lenin statue. Dito sinasabi ni Father na na nung minute niya si Gorbachev na hindi daw naghihingi yata ng financial si Gorbachev nanghihingi siya ng financial support kay Father dahil nakita niya yung ginawa niya sa China. Sabi ni Father, hindi yan magagawa ng financial support, kundi kailangan kang maniwala kay God, parang ganon. So, yun yung sinasabi niya. So yon sabi niya, Gorbachev asked Father to help them with global network and financial power. Father answered, financial help is only temporary. If you truly want to make Soviet Union great nation, you must believe in God. You cannot do it only with human mind. So give your people the freedom of religion and take down Lenin's statue. Father also asked him to open diplomatic relation with Korea and help Korea improve its relation with North Korea. Gorbachev followed Father and granted religious freedom in the nation. Father then suggested that Father educate Soviet youth as future national leaders so its eternal progress and prosperity. Gorbachev again followed him and entrusted him first with the education of education. Mali.
Education of the youth sa Soviet Union and na-accept ang divine principle as part of their curriculum sa mga universities.
Hindi ko makita. Sorry. And then doon naman sa meeting niya, it's part also sa 1950 to the 1990 sa 40-year prolongation is that yung meeting ni Father with Kim Il-sung and then sinabi din niya kay Kim Il-sung na kailangan hindi yung ang tawag dito, hindi masosolve, walang masosolve na doon nagsalita si Father ng tungkol sa youth ideology against sa youth ideology na doon sa kung mababasa niyo siya, it's all against doon sa pag nagsalita ka doon, pwede kang patayin dahil doon, pero tapos in the end, alam naman natin na nagkaroon ng reunion ng mga separated families, tapos yung sa Gunggam na mountain, even Kim Il-sung inoffer niya yung Gunggam mountain tourism na doon mag-help ng blessing. So yun yung so ito yung providence o to restore parentship. Kung mababasa din natin kay Mother, sinasabi dito na para bago nila i-meet si Kim Il-sung na 1991, kailangan, sabi niya, nag-condition si ng true parents na wala sila dapat tawag dito, sama ng loob kay Kim Il-sung, and magagawa lang nila yon, yun ang sabi niya, nila, is in the position of a parent. Kung ganun kasi, unconditional kasi yung parent, kaya nag-condition sila para mapatawad nila si Kim Il-sung, di ba? At wala silang So, yun, kaya na-restore yung parentship. Coming of the global age of young father's effort to establish mother called 7 countries 7 times a day for 40 years. So ito yung mga 7 nations, yung 7 nations sa World War I, yung 3 nations sa God's side and 3 nations sa Satan's side plus Korea, yung 7 nations. So uh, nagpe-pray siya for these nations 7 times o tinatawag niya yung mga nations na yan 7 times a day for 40 years. So, yun. Kaya nagkaroon ng age para yung mapunta niya si mother o ma-push niya si mother sa providential kanyang providential role at ma-restore niya si mother ay ma-restore niya yung kasalanan ni Eve. Yun. And then she appoint nung 1992 inappoint niya si mother as chairwoman of the Women's Federation for World Peace. And then, dito nag-start yung restoration of parents si Clarice to proclaim true parents na si mother yung nagpro-proclaim as Eve, restored Eve, siya yung nagpro-proclaim kay father as the Messiah, as the true parents of humankind. Kaya naipus ni father si mother doon. At ang naging effect, di ba, kung si father hindi siya tinatanggap, si mother tinatanggap siya. And this is yung last is that nung 1998 wherein father had blessed yung 1998 father blessed 4 great saints. Yung kasama nga si Jesus Christ, si Muhammad, yon. And 33 murderers. Kasama daw dun si Stalin. What does the blessing have? By blessing at the same time the greatest saints and murderers in the bottom of hell, including Stalin, Father demolished the barrier between heaven and hell. Without the barrier, God can now freely traverse not only through heaven but also through hell. Father said that He equalized heaven and hell. Father said that on March 21, 1999, he was in Brazil. Satan completely surrendered to him, saying, Father, there is no more accusation I can make against your work. So he was now able to do anything if it is God's providence. So pinayagan na ni Satan si Father na gawin ang lahat basta God's providence daw. Upon entering the year 2000, Father had the task to restore kingship, which is the stage after the restoration of elder sonship and parentship. Adam and Eve would have stood in elder sons before God, become parents after having children, and finally become king as they began to rule the world. After Father said that it is the completion of the deism of heavenly parentism. As they fell and failed to fulfill their kingship, however, Father had to fulfill it in his lifetime. For this, we need to establish the word that God has on the earth and it ruled by God's kingship. So Father held the coronation ceremony for God's kingship in 2001. Then on June 13, 2006, he entered the Gong and become true parents of his king. And on January 13, 2013, 12 years after the coronation ceremony, we had the foundation day and the age of Chunil Book finally began. Ito yung end ng ito yung mga national dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan for the cosmic level restoration of Canaan, which is now the nation of Korea. And this ends the chapter 6 of the second part of the divine principle. Ala, tapos na. Sorry po. Natagalan siya.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Terelina. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you so much. Let's all give a virtual applause to our lecturers. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, are we going to cater for everyone to reflect or
Yan daw.
Select one na lang kasi anong oras na. It's already 9:50.
sige, select one.
Wala yung mechanic.
Sige. Are there any brothers and sisters who would want to reflect in behalf of everyone? Or kami na yung mag-choose? Is there anybody who wanted to share their heart? And yeah. Anyone? Okay. If there's none, Ate Relina, would you want to call onto someone you wanted to hear from?
Gusto ko si Patrick.
Okay. Okay, Patrick, if it's okay, I hope you can open your camera and then you can give your reflection. You have been the chosen one. Okay. Let's all welcome Great Project brothers and sisters. Welcome. Let's hear reflection from Kuya.
Good good evening po, elders, brothers and sisters. So for my reflection for uh, this meeting that we had, a discussion that we had is that you know, uh, our understanding the heart of our true Father, that we learned that the God's providence settles at the third time at the number three. Then thinking of that, no matter what, our true Father must fulfill or achieve or complete the providence of restoration. Na seeing with those the path that he took, those for 40 the course of 40 years of indemnity for all of the failures of the central people, supposedly kanang supposedly unite with the second coming of the Messiah. So true Father really did his best na kanang thinking that he had no choice but to really fulfill the providence of restoration, to really become victorious as as the second coming of the Messiah. So reflecting with that, we should also inherit that heart of our true Father, that in us the the providence in our lineage must be victorious. That there's no need for our descendants to be the one who will be also liberating us. We should be the one to liberate all of our ancestors in our lineage. So no need to delay or prolong the providence of our lineage to the next generation, but we should inherit that heart of our true Father. And even though kanang, many opposed him, he still follow God's will, even though kanang uh, those people prepared by God to support him did not do their portion of responsibility. Uh, he took indemnity for them, so just to fulfill his mission. So that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kuya. Okay. Let's all give a hand to Kuya Patrick, brothers and sisters. Are there any other add-ons from our lectures? Anything you want to add on?
Yung mga last slides talaga, yung mga ano na yon. Ang summary lang nun is that this is yung talagang ano ba yon? Pinaiksi ni Father yung providence, yung para magawa niya lahat sa lifetime niya nang sa ganun, ma-proclaim niya. Kaya ang dami-dami kasi niyang mga pre-proclaim pero hindi natin kasi alam sa panahon na pinoproclaim niya, marami siyang proclamation na hindi natin alam at hindi natin naiintindihan. Pero it tries to explain to us kung ano yung mga iyon. Kaya nga tayo nasa Chunil book ngayon because of those restoration and indemnity that Father have laid para tayo magkaroon ng Chunil book. Even although alam naman natin na yun, sa part niya sa part niya, pero we need to do it individually or lay foundations and indemnity also as individually. So parang inopen lang ni Father yung para mag-stand tayo doon, but we need to do our responsibilities also, and we need to understand na hindi ganun kadali yung restoration, and that we need na hindi po pwedeng si Father lang ang gagawa nun. We need to follow also. And then ngayon lang, even me, ngayon ko lang naiintindihan yung iba. So yun, karamihan ng hindi ko pa rin talaga siya masyadong naiintindihan, pero habang nile-lecture lagi yan, nagiging grateful din ako sa lecture series na to because I understand the more we lecture it, the more na I understand Father more. Yun. Yung mga yung mga foundations and proclamations na ginawa niya. And the more I appreciate and I'm grateful. And the more I see na I have really been unfilial daughter to him. Kasi ang dami niyang ginawa, ang dami niyang linay na foundation for us, and yet I continue to become unfilial and wala akong ginagawa for him, for the providence. So, thank you.
So much, Ate Redina. Are there any other add-ons? Kaya Herwin, you would like to add?
Good evening, everybody. Again, may mga question kayo? If you have, you can chat lang din.
Actually, may nag-send ng isang question, Kuya.
Sa group chat. Pwede namin answer doon kasi wala tayong time dito. I know you have a lot of questions regarding the second coming. If wala na masyado.
Okay lang sa inyo na
anyway,
yung question na wala akong makita.
So we were talking about here with the Messiah, the second coming of the Messiah. Are you convinced enough that true parents are the Messiah.
Okay na.
Yes, sabi ni
Yes po.
But I want you to feel within your heart kasi if actually if you will talk to the intellectual people about that true parents are the Messiah, if you proclaim to them directly that these are true parents are the Messiah like this, they won't actually believe. I read one during Father was asked about how can we present how can we explain to the people that you are the Messiah? Ganun. Father said na please show to them first the principle. And if they will believe the principle, then they will surely believe the Messiah. So the point there is, if you will show to them the principle, not only through giving lecture, not only through the words, but through your lifestyle, those people that will yung nakarinig ng divine principle at mas especially yung nakakita sa lifestyle ng mga members, mas maniniwala sila that the parents, their father is the Messiah. So these are just the philosophical yung explanation sa inyo. How and when and in what manner the Messiah will come. But have to realize more. Have you dreamed of true parents yet? Especially, yung mga participants. Sino nakapanaginip na kay true parents? Wala pa? If not, wala pa. Pag hindi pa kayo nakapanaginip, then I think you have to pray more and reflect more. Actually, it's really good if you have that kind of experience. That is spiritual experience and heart connection towards true parents. Of course, that is not an assurance na you have that absolute faith, but somehow you would really feel through that experience who are the Messiah. So yeah, that's let's show to them that true parents are the Messiah, right? Show to them. You cannot, those close-minded, you cannot really like hindi mo sila ma-convince talaga, to be honest, through words. No, that's absolutely it is not impossible, but it is very hard. But showing your action, that's really matters to them. Okay, good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much po, Kuya Ruben. Are they, sige. So, it's okay na if we should close the program. Okay. So to close our program, let's have a closing prayer. May I ask Kuya Ray Delendo to lead us the closing prayer. So, Kuya.
Okay, let us pray. Our dearest beloved Father, thank you for everything, for the showers, the blessings and provided into our life. So you would like to let us divine principle as instrument of fulfilling the seven Once again, we would like to invite the presence of the Spirit World and the God and sisters to guide us to cooperate with us in the responsibility that you want us to take to the daily life of believers. Once again, thank you for everything and all the showers and all those things that you have been given to us. May this knowledge benefit us now and been learned is principle to be important to may guide the rest of our brothers and sisters about the platform. So I've been paid and still there be paid as always. On the stage, I report your name. Really, I'll look at the other to those into his family. Jill.
Raju.
Anju, thank you so much. Thank you so much once again, brothers and sisters. So reminder lang,
Thank you very much.
reminder everyone, please don't forget to send your reflections. And if you have questions, you may send it to GC. And hopefully we could answer all your queries as well. Thank you so much once again, brothers and sisters, for your hard work. Thank you so much to our lecturers, to our elders who are here. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night,
Good
Christine,
night.
Patrick.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you
Hi,
po.
Vince.
Hindi kita narinig ngayon, Christine.
Gina
Ganda
May.
ng picture mo doon na naka. Ganda ng picture mo nang naka-offline ka, ha?
Di ay. Ganun di.
Nakikumpensa sa imong self, ha?
Sige po. Salamat po. Appreciate mo.
Okay, thank you, taga Bohol. I
Good
love
night
you
po.
all.
Thank you so
Happy
much.
Josephine.
Puro mo na taga-buhol.
Hindi ko nakikita.
Ay, ikaw man taga Bohol. Cardinal, iba man yun sa'yo. Cardinal, yung taga Bohol man. Na mga young people. Young people ka pa rin naman, no? Sorry. Good night,
Good night po.
everyone.
Good night.
Bye, Vince.
Hello po.
Good
Good night po.
night.